Hi there. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what it used to be like being a health and medical journalist, and then the reality of what when I started at U.S. News in 1997, I write an article, and then I had to compile this fact file of every journal article I read, every interview I did, annotated, phone numbers for everybody. I'd bring it down to this vast room full of PhDs who were sitting there, who would go through and call back every researcher, grill me over the specifics of these things. And we did that not just for articles, but for graphics and everything else. And then if it got through that, then it went through the copy desk, right, where there were other really smart, experienced people and would call you at midnight and say, "This doesn't seem quite right. Are you really sure that you're talking about chlamydia here?" So, I felt pretty confident that if I screwed up, I'm an English major, what do I know? At least, people were backstopping. So that was then. We had, the news was fact-checked. Now, the news is Oprah-checked. This is a problem. This is a big problem. Whoops, what happened? Oh, sorry. Oh, boy, was I fast enough? Because I don't know about you, but Oprah I don't think is the most reliable source of health and medical information for the American public, even though 8 million people watch her every day. So this is a problem because, as many of you know, most people now get their health and medical information from either TV or the internet. The internet number is going up, TV is still the dominant form, which means if you're getting your health news from TV, you're getting it not just from Oprah, but from Oprah and Suzanne Summers. This is even scarier. So then you think, okay, but you go to a trusted source like U.S. News and World Report. I used to be the science editor there. I thought we did a really good job of putting out a reliable science news. And you look, this is from the U.S. News website this week. You look, and there's this story, right, about silver and meteorites. You say, okay, great, but then it's actually not written by anyone from U.S. News. If you look, it came from the National Science Foundation news feed. You think, okay, government agency, reliable. Well, this story was not written by anybody at NSF. This actually is a press release from the Carnegie Institution, which funded the research, which is put verbatim on the NSF feed and now put verbatim on the US News website. This is not good. So then, yes, there are people out reporting health and medical news on the web. This is a site called Associated Content. They put out about 2,000 articles a day. They have 15 full-time editors. This is the CEO said this week, leaving 2 minutes per story to devote to editing, given the 2,000 story a day flow. So as Patrick Keane, the CEO, said, editing amounts to, quote, making sure the title is correct, the story's not gibberish, and not created by a bot in the Philippines. More trouble. Okay, so then we get in this situation where you can have 25% of parents saying that they think maybe vaccines cause autism, and when they get on the web to look this up, they can find the Age of Autism news site, which looks as credible and might even sound more sympathetic to their worries than the CDC website. This is a problem. So what do we do about this? I thought about 4 different solutions for this problem that might work. We could really try hard to be accurate, but that takes time and money, and most news organizations don't have either these days, particularly in a 24/7 internet news cycle. We could try relying on trusted names and authorities, but Oprah's a trusted name, and you can get an MD to say that vaccine causes autism, so that's not too useful. We could create high standards within news organizations, and I'm sorry to report that most national news organizations don't have standards for reporting or editing, so particularly for health and medical news. Or we could explain how we report health news and disclose when we screw it up. Most news organizations don't do that. Maybe there's an ombudsman who will occasionally write something when people complain enough. But there's no QA in news organizations, and this is a real problem. So there are some good things happening that I want to let you know about. I'll give you 2 examples. This is the Knight News Tracker, which is funded by the Knight Foundation. They have a bunch of very experienced journalists every day reviewing the science, health, and medical news that's out there and writing about how good job they think they're doing. They also include the press release that the institution put out, so you can compare what the journalist wrote to what the press release said and see if they're just lifting directly from the press release. Really interesting, but it's mostly kind of inside baseball for science and medical writers. Here's another site, which I think is even more exciting for those of us who concentrate on medicine. It's called Health News Review. It was started by Gary Schwitzer, who's a former CNN reporter. And they also have a panel, and they review health and medical coverage in the news. And they use this 10-point metric over here with criteria, which I think are very good, including what does it cost, what are the benefits, you know, they run down that. Very useful. Most newsrooms do not use this. They're doing training, but it hasn't really filtered out there. And I think the other thing that is missing here is that it's not very user-friendly for the public. And I think that's a big step that I think needs to be done. Okay, so what can we do to do this right? Here's my ideas on what we might be able to do that hasn't happened, but maybe could. Oops, I did it again. Sorry. Get me back. Yeah, the next one. Okay, that's it. I think that news organizations need to be out front and say if they have internal review and quality assurance and how they train their reporters and editors. It doesn't happen, but it should. We need to have we also have to have news organizations say, well, you know, I'm looking at that and I'm going to really try to keep track of how well we do, particularly with health and medicine stories where you can quantify a little bit more easily. And reporting internally, you know, to your staff and let people know how you're doing, but also to the public. Because most journalists haven't wanted to talk about when we make errors, and I think it's time for us to come clean. And the third one is the things that interest me most. I love narrative journalism, but I think very often when you're writing about complex medical subjects, it's a bad way to convey information. And I think there's real opportunities for us on the web now to come up with interactive tools for consumers so that they can have different ways to manipulate and use the health and medical information that's being presented. So instead of just writing up yet another story on a study and putting it up on WebMD or the 50, we all journalists do the same kind of coverage of science stories. Think about cleverly how we could create tools to make that information more accessible and controllable by the public. And that's something I'm excited about, and I hope you'll be interested in talking to me about that. Thank you very much.